Hello guys and welcome to another Tokyo Revengers video. And in this video, I will be talking about the newest episode of Tokyo Revengers. And this video will be an anime review for episode 36 of Tokyo Revengers, and this is the 12th episode of the second season. And this episode covers chapters 115, 116, 117, 118, and 119 of the Tokyo Revengers manga. And in this video series, I will also be comparing the anime to the manga, and I will analyze these episodes to see if there were any scenes that were removed from the source material. And in this episode we will get to see the ending of the Black Dragons arc, and this episode is the very last episode of the Black Dragons arc. And this episode mostly just serves to show us what happens in this future timeline, and the character Mikey was the main focus of this episode. And there were many crazy plot twists that happened in this chapter, and there were also many major reveals that shocked the fans of Tokyo Revengers. Anyway guys, before I get into this video guys, please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more Tokyo Revengers videos. So let's get into the video now. So this episode starts off by showing us chapter 115, and this episode starts off right where the last episode ended, and we see that Takemichi is at Mitsuya's funeral. And in this scene Takemichi is just looking at Mitsuya's dead body, and he has many sweat drops running down his face. And then Takemichi started running away from the funeral, and while he was running Takemichi was wondering why the future hasn't changed. And then Takemichi fell down to the ground, and in this moment Takemichi started screaming out into the air, and he was also crying at the same exact time. And then Takemichi went to his old apartment, and in this apartment he was looking at an old photograph. And then Naoto suddenly arrived at the apartment, and then Naoto said that this is the worst future timeline that they have ever seen. And then Naoto told Takemichi that all the Toman members have been killed. And in this moment Takemichi asked Naoto if Mikey is alive, however Naoto just responded to this by telling Takemichi that the criminal who was wanted for these serial murders is actually Manjiro Sano. And then Naoto told Takemichi that he is the only Toman member that hasn't been murdered. Anyway guys, this is where chapter 115 ends, and chapter 116 begins with showing us that Takemichi is thinking about Mikey, and he is wondering if Mikey really killed everyone. And then Takemichi told Naoto that he accomplished all of his goals in the past, so he doesn't understand why this future timeline turned out so badly. And then in the next scene Takemichi suddenly found a letter, and Takemichi said that he found the photograph in this letter. And after looking at the postmark, Naoto realized that this letter is from the Philippines. And then in the next scene we see that Takemichi and Naoto decided to travel to the Philippines by flying on a plane. And when they arrived at the city of Manila, the anime added a scene that was never in the manga, and in this scene Takemichi and Naoto are just walking together, and in the manga Takemichi was just walking by himself. And then Takemichi arrived at the address that was on the postcard. And after entering the building, Takemichi suddenly heard someone say his name, and in this moment we got to see a small glimpse of Mikey for the very first time. And in this scene we also got to see the reaction of Takemichi, and Takemichi just had a very surprised look on his face. And then the next scene shows us a very beautiful shot of Mikey and Takemichi, and in this moment they are just staring at each other, and in the background we can see that the rays of light are coming in from the cracks in the building. And when he saw Mikey, we saw that Takemichi started tearing up, and in this moment Takemichi was thinking to himself that Mikey has the same look in his eyes. And in this moment we also get to see a close-up shot of Mikey's face, and we can also see that Mikey is smiling at Takemichi. Anyway guys, this is where chapter 117 ends, and chapter 118 begins with showing us that Takemichi just said Mikey's name. And then in the next scene we see that Takemichi suddenly started crying, and in this moment he has tears streaming down his face. And then Takemichi tried to wipe the tears off of his face, and while he was doing this Takemichi was apologizing to Mikey. And Mikey responded to this by telling Takemichi that he is still a crybaby even after all this time, and while he was saying this Mikey was holding up his chin. And then in the next scene Takemichi started smiling. And then Mikey told Takemichi that he called him here to ask him for a favor, and then Mikey said after he came here he suddenly started getting memories of his older brother. And then Mikey started telling Takemichi about his backstory, and Mikey told Takemichi about how he grew Toman. And then Mikey told Takemichi that Toman changed, and then Mikey just asked Takemichi why he decided to leave Toman. And then Mikey told Takemichi that he wanted him to stay, and Mikey also told Takemichi that he wanted him to scold him like a brother would. And this dialogue is a reference to episode 34 of Tokyo Revengers, and the reason why I say this is because in this episode Takemichi made a promise to Mikey that he would scold him like his brother would. And Mikey said that he kept going on his own, however he couldn't stop from losing himself. And Mikey said that he tried to stop him from leaving Toman. And then in the next part of this episode the episode transitions to showing us a flashback, and in this flashback Draken was telling Mikey to stop. And then Mikey asked Draken what he is talking about. And then Mikey asked Draken if he thinks that he can boss him around. And then Mitsuya told Mikey that he agrees with Draken. And in this scene we saw that Mikey got very angry at Mitsuya, and Mitsuya told Mikey that Takemichi is not a good fit for the direction that Toman is going. And then Draken and Mitsuya started bowing down to Mikey, and in this moment Draken told Mikey that the path that he chose is a violent one. And Draken said that him and Mitsuya will give their lives to him. And then Draken said that they made up their minds. And in this scene Mitsuya just said, "But Mikey," and then Mitsuya told Mikey that they owe so much to Takemichi, and while he was saying this he had a smile on his face. And Mitsuya also said that he doesn't want Takemichi to turn out like them. And then Draken started speaking to Mikey, and Draken told Mikey to leave Takemichi out of this. And we saw that Takemichi started crying after hearing about this story. And then Mikey said that Draken and Mitsuya are just the best, and then in the next scene Mikey told Takemichi that he is the person who killed them. And then Mikey told Takemichi that the old Toman doesn't exist anymore, and then Mikey said he killed every single one of them. Anyway guys, in this scene Mikey was telling Takemichi that he killed everyone, and then Mikey told Takemichi that he wants to ask him to end all of this. And then in the next scene we saw that Mikey gave Takemichi his gun, and in this moment Mikey told Takemichi that he wants Takemichi to kill him. And then in the next scene we get to see the reaction of Takemichi, and in this moment he has tears streaming down his face, and we also saw that Mikey was staring at Takemichi. Anyway guys, this is where chapter 117 ends, and chapter 118 begins with showing us that Mikey is telling Takemichi to kill him. And then in the next scene we see that Mikey started walking towards Takemichi, and after walking up to Takemichi Mikey said that he wants to end everything right here. And then Takemichi started begging Mikey to stop this, and Takemichi said that he just wanted to see him again. And Mikey said that Hakai said the same thing right before he died. And in this scene we get to see a flashback, and this flashback shows us how Mikey killed Hakai. And Hakai was telling Mikey that he just wanted to have a good time, and Hakai also said that he wanted to hang out with Takemichi and the others just one last time. And Mikey said that it is hard to make your dreams come true, and Mikey also said that before he knew it things got difficult. And then Mikey told Takemichi that the first time he killed someone, he didn't feel anything. And Mikey said that he realized that most problems can be solved by killing people. And Mikey said that he can just erase anyone who gets in his way. And in this moment Takemichi told Mikey that he is wrong, and Takemichi told Mikey that he hasn't changed at all. However, in the next scene we see that Mikey suddenly slammed Takemichi to the ground, and then Mikey asked Takemichi who does he think he is. And in this scene we get to see a flashback of when Mikey killed Shifuyu, and in this scene Mikey was asking him if he has any last words. And Mikey was pointing his gun at Shifuyu's head. And in this moment Shifuyu asked Mikey if he remembers Takemichi. And then Shifuyu told Mikey that Takemichi will come looking for him. And Shifuyu said that when he meets him, it will be like he traveled back in time, and he will be like the same as he was years ago. And then Shifuyu told Mikey to look at him straight in his eyes, because his eyes never lie. And then Shifuyu told Mikey that he hopes that he can believe him, and while he was saying this we saw that Shifuyu started tearing up, and he was also smiling at the same exact time. Anyway guys, in case you guys did not know, this scene is actually a parallel to the scene where Kisaki killed Shifuyu, and the reason why I say this is because in the last future timeline Kisaki did the same exact thing as Mikey, and Kisaki pointed the gun to Shifuyu's head, and he also asked Shifuyu for his last words in the same exact way that Mikey did. And this parallel is showing us that Mikey has become just as ruthless as Kisaki, and this parallel is meant to show us how much Mikey has changed. And next the chapter switches back to the current timeline, and we see that Mikey is pointing his gun at Takemichi's head, and in this moment Mikey was also crying at the same exact time. And then Mikey told Takemichi to pick up the gun, and Mikey also told him that he has to kill him or else he will die. And then in the next scene we see that Mikey started crying, and in this moment Mikey had tears streaming down his face. And then the next scene shows us that Mikey's tears landed on Takemichi's face, and in this moment we saw that Takemichi was also crying. Anyway guys, chapter 118 ends with showing us that someone just shot a gun, and chapter 119 begins with showing us that a gunshot suddenly went off, and we saw that this gunshot hit Mikey in the head, and we saw that Mikey had blood coming out of his head. And after being hit by this bullet, we saw that Mikey's body fell down to the ground. And then we see that this gun was shot by Naoto, and after entering the building Naoto asked Takemichi if he is alright. And then Takemichi started holding Mikey's body, and in this moment Naoto suddenly realized that the safety was on for Mikey's gun. And in this scene we see that Takemichi is holding Mikey's head in his arms, and in this scene we also see that Takemichi is breaking down into tears. And then Takemichi started screaming out into the air, and Takemichi was screaming Mikey's name. And then Mikey said thank you to Naoto, and Mikey said that Takemichi wouldn't have been able to pull the trigger. And then Mikey said that he is glad that everything is finally over. And Mikey also said that his whole entire life was nothing but suffering and pain, and while he was saying this Mikey was breaking down into tears. And Takemichi told Mikey not to say that, and Takemichi also told Mikey that he will go back to the past so that he can change the future, and Takemichi said that he will never give up. And Takemichi told Mikey not to say something so depressing, and while he was saying this we saw that he had tears streaming down his face. And then Mikey said thank you to Takemichi, and Mikey said thank you for trying to comfort him. And Mikey said that it makes him happy even if he's lying. And then in the next scene Mikey told Takemichi that his hand is so warm, and in this scene Takemichi was holding Mikey in his arms, and while this was happening we saw that both of them were crying. And then Mikey's body suddenly went cold, and Mikey stopped responding to Takemichi. And this part of the episode was showing us that Mikey died in Takemichi's arms, and while this was happening Takemichi was remembering every single moment that him and Mikey both shared together. Anyway guys, this episode ends with showing us what happens after Mikey died in Takemichi's arms, and we get to see that Takemichi has a very determined facial expression. And in this moment Takemichi has tears streaming down his face, however from the look on his face we can see that Takemichi still has a very strong conviction to change the future. Anyway guys, this is where chapter 119 ends, and this is the end of this video. Anyway guys, if you guys enjoyed this video, and want to see more like it then like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for watching.